In a distant corner of the Milky Way galaxy, there existed a powerful organization known as the Galactic Council. It was made up of many different alien races who had come together long ago to bring order and stability to their part of the universe. For thousands of years, the Council had guided the younger races, sharing knowledge and mediating conflicts to maintain a fragile peace. Earth was a newcomer to the galactic stage. When humans first ventured out into the stars, they were amazed to discover that they were not alone. There were vast civilizations and advanced technologies beyond their wildest imaginings. With a mixture of caution and excitement, Earth's leaders reached out to the Galactic Council, seeking to join this community of enlightened species. At first, the Council welcomed Earth with open arms. The humans were seen as a primitive but promising race, with great potential for growth under the Council's guidance. Earth was granted a probationary seat on the Council and eagerly engaged in cultural exchanges and technological sharing with the other member races. However, not everyone on the Council was happy about Earth's inclusion. Some of the older, more established races viewed humans with suspicion and even fear. Earth's rapid advancement and aggressive expansion worried them. They saw humans as unpredictable and dangerous, a potential threat to the careful balance of power. As Earth's influence grew, these factions began to scheme in secret, plotting to undermine the humans' position. They spread rumors and misinformation, painting humans as violent and untrustworthy. They used their influence to limit Earth's access to advanced technology and to stall their progress within the Council hierarchy. Earth's ambassadors did their best to counter these efforts, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered at every turn. The humans on the Council found themselves isolated, their supposed allies turning a blind eye to the growing hostility. Matters came to a head when a group of extremists within the Council launched a surprise attack on several of Earth's extrasolar colonies. The attackers struck without warning or provocation, destroying vital infrastructure and slaughtering civilians. The colonies were left in ruins, cut off from support and unable to defend themselves. When news of the attack reached Earth, there was shock and outrage. The Galactic Council claimed no knowledge of the incident, but their condemnation of the attackers rang hollow. It was clear that someone within the Council had orchestrated this act of aggression, seeking to cripple Earth's expansion and put them in their place. In the face of this betrayal, Earth's grief quickly turned to anger. The people demanded action, calling for their leaders to strike back against those who had wronged them. The government, united in their resolve, vowed that this attack would not go unanswered. Earth would have its revenge, no matter the cost. As the funeral pyres burned and the wounded were tended to, Earth began to mobilize for war. The Council had underestimated the humans' determination and resourcefulness. They would soon learn the true extent of humanity's wrath. The galaxy would tremble before the fury of a species betrayed. Earth's ruthless revenge was about to begin. In the aftermath of the Galactic Council's devastating attack, Earth's leaders gathered to plan their response. The room was filled with a mix of grief, anger, and determination. They knew that they faced an uphill battle against the technologically superior Council races, but they were resolved to fight back with everything they had. As the discussions grew heated, one voice rose above the others. It belonged to a young woman named Alara Vance, a brilliant strategist and rising star in Earth's military. Alara had long warned of the Council's duplicity and had advocated for Earth to strengthen its defenses. Now, in the face of this crisis, all eyes turned to her for guidance. Alara stepped forward, her gaze fierce and unwavering. She laid out a daring plan to strike back at the heart of the Council's power. It would require cunning, sacrifice, and a willingness to use unconventional tactics. Many in the room were hesitant, but Alara's passion and logic won them over. With a unanimous vote, Earth's leaders put their trust in Alara and her vision for revenge. As the news of Alara's appointment spread, the people of Earth rallied behind her. She became a symbol of hope and defiance, a hero who would lead them to victory against the Council's tyranny. Volunteers flooded the recruitment centers, eager to join the fight. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop new weapons and defenses. A sense of unity and purpose swept across the planet, united in their determination to make the Council pay. Under Alara's guidance, Earth's forces began to mobilize. She gathered a team of the brightest minds and bravest warriors, each handpicked for their unique skills and abilities. Together, they worked to analyze the Council's weaknesses and develop a strategy to exploit them. Alara knew that Earth couldn't match the Council's numbers or firepower in a head-on confrontation. Instead, she focused on asymmetric warfare, using speed, stealth, and deception to even the odds. She sent small, highly trained teams to sabotage key Council installations and gather intelligence. She leaked false information to sow confusion and discord among the Council races. As Earth's attacks began to take their toll, the Council grew increasingly frustrated and paranoid. They lashed out with brutal reprisals, but Alara had anticipated this. She used their aggression against them, luring them into traps and ambushes. Each victory, however small, boosted Earth's morale and eroded the Council's unity. Meanwhile, Alara worked to build alliances with other races who had been oppressed or marginalized by the Council. She reached out to rebel groups and dissident factions, offering them support and a chance to strike back at their oppressors. Slowly but surely, a coalition began to form, united in their desire to see the Council fall. As the war escalated, Alara's legend grew. To the people of Earth, she was a savior, a warrior queen who would stop at nothing to protect her people. To the Council, she was a monster, a ruthless adversary who seemed to anticipate their every move. They placed a bounty on her head and sent their best agents to eliminate her. But Alara remained one step ahead. Despite the growing toll of the war, Alara never wavered in her resolve. She knew that the path she had chosen was a difficult one, filled with hardship and sacrifice. But she also knew that it was the only way to ensure Earth's survival and freedom. She would see this fight through to the end, no matter the personal cost. As Earth's forces prepared for their next move, Alara looked to the stars with a mixture of determination and anticipation. The Council had started this war, but she would be the one to finish it. Earth's revenge had only just begun. As Earth's forces rallied under Alara's leadership, the time had come to launch their first major offensive against the Galactic Council. The target was a heavily fortified Council outpost on the edge of human space. This outpost served as a staging ground for the Council's attacks and a symbol of their dominance over the region. Alara knew that a direct assault on the outpost would be suicide. The Council's defenses were too strong, and their forces too numerous. Instead, she devised a daring plan to infiltrate the outpost and destroy it from within. It was a risky gambit, but one that could deal a significant blow to the Council's morale and military capabilities. To carry out the mission, Alara assembled a small team of her most skilled and trusted operatives. Among them was a grizzled veteran named Marcus, a master of infiltration and sabotage. There was also Lyra, a brilliant hacker who could bypass even the most secure systems. Rounding out the team was Zora, a deadly sniper with nerves of steel. The team set out in a stealth ship, slipping past the Council's patrols and sensor nets. As they approached the outpost, they split up, each taking on a specific role in the plan. Marcus and Lyra would infiltrate the outpost's command center and sabotage its defenses, while Zora provided overwatch and eliminated any threats. Alara herself would lead a diversionary attack on the outpost's perimeter, drawing the Council's forces away from the real target. It was a dangerous role, but one that she insisted on taking. She would not ask her people to take risks that she herself was unwilling to face. As the team moved into position, tension hung thick in the air. They knew that the fate of the mission, and perhaps the entire war effort, rested on their shoulders. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, could spell disaster. At Alara's signal, the diversionary attack began. Explosions rocked the outpost's perimeter as Earth's forces engaged the Council's troops. Alara led from the front, her plasma rifle blazing as she charged into the fray. The Council's forces were caught off guard, scrambling to respond to the sudden assault. Meanwhile, Marcus and Lyra slipped into the command center, bypassing the Council's security with ease. Once inside, they went to work, planting explosives and virus-laden data spikes. Lyra's fingers flew over the control panels, her eyes locked on the screens as she worked to bring down the outpost's defenses. Just as they were about to make their escape, alarms began to blare. The Council had discovered their intrusion and were moving to cut them off. Marcus and Lyra exchanged a grim look, knowing that they were out of time. Outside, Alara and her team were being pushed back by the Council's reinforcements. They fought bravely, but the odds were against them. Alara gritted her teeth, determined to buy Marcus and Lyra the time they needed. Just as all seemed lost, a series of explosions rocked the command center. Marcus and Lyra had succeeded in their mission, and the outpost's defenses were crumbling. Seizing the opportunity, Alara rallied her troops for a final push. As the dust settled, the Council's forces lay broken and scattered. The outpost was in ruins, its secrets and resources lay bare for Earth's taking. Alara stood amidst the wreckage, her armor scorched and her face grim. It was a victory, but she knew that it was only the beginning. As they sifted through the rubble, Marcus and Lyra made a startling discovery. The outpost's data banks contained information about a secret Council project, one that could turn the tide of the war. It was a lead that they couldn't afford to ignore. Alara knew that the Council would be reeling from this defeat, but they would also be more determined than ever to crush Earth's resistance. She had struck the first blow, but the real fight was still to come. Earth's revenge was just getting started. The success of the raid on the Council outpost marked a turning point in the war. Earth's forces, emboldened by their victory, launched a series of daring attacks across Council-controlled space. Under Alara's leadership, they struck at supply lines, communication hubs, and military installations, leaving chaos and confusion in their wake. The Council, reeling from these losses, responded with a fury of their own. They declared Earth a rogue state and a threat to galactic peace. They rallied their allies and vassals, launching a massive counter-offensive aimed at crushing the human resistance once and for all. Alara knew that Earth could not hope to match the Council's numbers or firepower in a direct confrontation. Instead, she turned to the information that Marcus and Lyra had uncovered during the raid on the outpost. The secret Council project, codenamed Convergence, hinted at a weapon of immense power, one that could potentially turn the tide of the war. Determined to uncover the truth behind Convergence, Alara dispatched her team to gather more intelligence. They infiltrated Council bases, hacked into secure networks, and interrogated captured officials. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape. It soon became clear that Convergence was no ordinary weapon. It was a doomsday device, capable of unleashing devastation on an unimaginable scale. The Council, it seemed, had been developing this weapon in secret for years, intending to use it as a last resort to maintain their grip on power. Alara was horrified by the implications of this discovery. She knew that if the Council were to unleash Convergence, it would mean the end of not just Earth, but potentially all life in the galaxy. She could not allow that to happen. As the war raged on, Alara formed a daring plan to neutralize the Convergence threat. She would lead a small team deep into Council space, infiltrating the heavily guarded facility where the weapon was being developed. Once inside, they would destroy the device and any research associated with it. It was a mission from which they might not return, but Alara was prepared to make that sacrifice. She gathered her team, Marcus, Lyra, Zara, and a few other trusted comrades, and set out on what might well be their final mission. Infiltrating the Convergence facility proved to be the most challenging operation they had ever undertaken. The Council's defenses were formidable, and the facility was guarded by their most elite troops. But Alara and her team were determined, and through a combination of skill, cunning, and sheer audacity, they managed to breach the facility's perimeter. Once inside, they faced even greater dangers. The facility was a labyrinth of security checkpoints, automated defenses, and deadly traps. They fought their way through, level by level, suffering losses but never wavering in their resolve. Finally, they reached the heart of the facility, where the convergence device was housed. It was a monstrous creation, pulsing with malevolent energy. Alara and her team set to work, planting explosives and sabotaging critical systems. Just as they were about to make their escape, they were confronted by a final, unexpected obstacle. The lead scientist behind Convergence, a brilliant but twisted individual, had activated the device. He declared that if humanity would not submit to the Council's rule, then they would all perish together. In a desperate race against time, Alara and her team fought to shut down the device before it could fully activate. It was a battle that pushed them to their limits, both physically and mentally. In the end, it was Lyra who managed to hack into the device's control systems and initiate a self-destruct sequence. They barely made it out before the facility exploded in a blinding flash of light. The convergence device was destroyed, and with it, the Council's hopes of ultimate victory. It was a major blow, but Alara knew that the war was far from over. The Council would be more determined than ever to crush Earth's resistance. As they limped back to friendly space, battered but unbroken, Alara and her team knew that they had achieved a significant victory. They had struck at the very heart of the Council's power and shown that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Earth's revenge had reached a new level, and the galaxy would never be the same again. In the wake of the destruction of the Convergence facility, the Galactic Council was in disarray. Their ultimate weapon, the one they had pinned their hopes on to crush Earth's resistance, was gone. The loss was not just a military blow, but a psychological one as well. For the first time, the Council's member races began to doubt the wisdom of their war against humanity. Alara and her team returned to Earth as heroes. They were greeted with cheers and celebrations, hailed as the saviors of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. But Alara knew that this was no time for complacency. The Council might be reeling, but they were far from defeated. As she had predicted, the Council's retaliation was swift and brutal. They launched a series of massive attacks across human-controlled space, targeting civilian populations and infrastructure. It was a campaign of terror designed to break humanity's will to fight. But the Council had underestimated the resilience and determination of the human spirit. Instead of cowering in fear, Earth's people rallied together. They volunteered for military service in record numbers, donated resources to the war effort, and worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been destroyed. Alara, meanwhile, was hard at work planning their next move. She knew that they had to seize the initiative, to strike back at the Council while they were still off balance. But where to strike? The Council's territory was vast, and their defenses were formidable. The answer came from an unexpected source. A group of rebels from one of the Council's vassal races reached out to Alara, offering an alliance. They had long chafed under the Council's rule and saw Earth's fight as an opportunity to win their own freedom. Alara was initially wary of this offer. The rebels were an unknown quantity, and there was always the risk of betrayal. But the potential benefits were too great to ignore. With the rebels' inside knowledge of Council territory and their network of contacts, Earth could launch a series of precision strikes that could cripple the Council's war machine. And so, a daring plan was hatched. Alara and her team would work with the rebels to identify key targets, supply depots, shipyards, command centers. They would infiltrate these facilities, gathering intelligence and planting explosives. Then, at a coordinated signal, they would strike simultaneously, dealing a devastating blow to the Council's ability to wage war. It was a risky plan, one that required careful coordination and flawless execution. But Alara was confident in her team's abilities. They had come this far, had overcome so many obstacles. They would not fail now. As the day of the operation approached, tension mounted. Alara and her team split up, each heading to their assigned target. They knew that they would be operating deep behind enemy lines, with no hope of rescue if things went wrong. But they were prepared to make that sacrifice for the sake of Earth and all those who counted on them. When the signal came, the attacks were launched with surgical precision. Across Council space, explosions lit up the sky as key installations were destroyed. The Council's forces, caught off guard, struggled to respond. It was a stunning victory for Earth and their rebel allies. But the success came at a cost. Not all of Alara's team made it back. Marcus, her trusted friend and comrade, was killed in action, sacrificing himself to ensure the success of his mission. His loss was a heavy blow to Alara and to all who knew him. As they regrouped and counted their losses, Alara knew that the war was entering a new phase. The Council, desperate and angry, would be more dangerous than ever. But Earth had shown that it could strike at the very heart of their power, that it would not be cowed or broken. The path ahead would be long and hard, filled with sacrifice and uncertainty, but Alara was determined to see it through. For Marcus, for all those who had given their lives in this struggle, and for the future of humanity, Earth's revenge would be complete, no matter the cost. In the aftermath of the coordinated strikes against the Galactic Council, the war entered a new, more intense phase. The Council, enraged by the attacks and the loss of their key installations, unleashed the full might of their military against Earth and its allies. Battles raged across the galaxy, with the Council's forces seeking to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers and firepower. But Earth's military, battle-hardened and determined, held their ground. They employed guerrilla tactics, striking at the Council's supply lines and communications, then fading back into the shadows. Alara was at the forefront of this fight, leading her troops in daring raids and desperate defenses. She was a beacon of hope and inspiration to her people, a symbol of Earth's unyielding spirit. But privately, she was haunted by the losses they had suffered, by the sacrifices that had been made. Marcus's death weighed heavily on her. He had been more than just a comrade. He had been a friend, a confidant. His loss left a void that could not be filled. But Alara knew that she could not let grief consume her. She had to be strong, for her troops and for the people of Earth. As the war ground on, Alara began to realize that they were reaching a stalemate. Earth's forces, for all their bravery and skill, could not hope to defeat the Council in a war of attrition. They needed a new strategy, a way to strike at the heart of the Council's power. The answer came from Lyra, who had been analyzing the data they had gathered from their raids and infiltrations. She had discovered a pattern, a network of hidden connections that linked the Council's member races. It was a complex web of alliances, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts that held the Council together. If they could disrupt this network, Lyra argued, they could weaken the Council from within. They could sow discord and mistrust among the member races, turning them against each other. It was a strategy that required subtlety and finesse, but it could be devastatingly effective. Alara was intrigued by this idea. It was a departure from their usual tactics, but it held promise. She tasked Lyra with developing a plan, while she and the rest of the team focused on maintaining the pressure on the Council's military. Lyra's plan, when it was presented, was audacious in its scope. It involved a series of carefully orchestrated events, leaks of sensitive information, staged incidents, and false flag operations. Each one was designed to erode the trust and cooperation between the Council's member races. It was a risky gambit, one that required precise timing and flawless execution. But Alara and her team were ready. They set the plan in motion, carefully planting the seeds of discord across Council space. At first, the effects were subtle. A trade dispute here, a border skirmish there. But as the plan progressed, the cracks in the Council's unity began to widen. Member races began to question the Council's leadership, to wonder if their alliances were more a burden than a benefit. The Council, sensing the growing unrest, tried to clamp down. They imposed stricter controls, harsher punishments for dissent. But it was too late. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and they were beginning to bear fruit. As the Council's grip on power began to slip, Alara and her team launched their final offensive. They struck at key Council strongholds, capitalizing on the confusion and disarray. The Council's forces, divided and demoralized, began to crumble. In the end, it was not a climactic battle that marked the end of the war, but a series of surrenders and defections. One by one, the Council's member races laid down their arms, some eagerly, some grudgingly. The Galactic Council, once the most powerful force in the known universe, had fallen. As the dust settled, Alara could hardly believe it. They had won. Against all odds, against an enemy that had seemed invincible, they had emerged victorious. Earth, the once small, upstart world, was now a major power in the galaxy. But Alara knew that their work was not done. The galaxy was in chaos, with old alliances shattered and new ones yet to be formed. Earth would have to step up to help guide the galaxy into a new era of peace and cooperation. It was a daunting task, but one that Alara was ready to face. For the sake of her fallen comrades, for the future of humanity, she would not rest until the job was done. In the wake of the Galactic Council's collapse, the galaxy was in turmoil. The old order had been swept away, leaving a power vacuum that threatened to plunge the galaxy into a new era of chaos and conflict. Alara, as the leader of Earth's forces and the architect of the Council's downfall, found herself thrust into the center of this maelstrom. The eyes of the galaxy were upon her, looking to her for guidance and leadership in this uncertain time. It was a role that Alara had never sought, but one that she knew she must accept. The future of not just Earth, but of the entire galaxy rested on her shoulders. She could not, would not, shirk that responsibility. The first order of business was to secure Earth's position. Though the Council had fallen, there were still those who harbored resentment and hostility towards humanity. Alara worked tirelessly to establish diplomatic relations with the former Council races, to forge new alliances based on mutual respect and cooperation. It was not an easy task. Many of the races were wary of Earth, seeing them as upstarts and usurpers. But Alara was patient and persistent. She demonstrated Earth's commitment to peace and stability, their willingness to work with others for the common good. Slowly but surely, progress was made. Treaties were signed. Trade routes were established. Earth began to take its place as a major power in the galaxy, not through force of arms, but through the strength of its principles and the wisdom of its leadership. But not all was well in the galaxy. In the outer reaches, a new threat was emerging. A race of alien warriors, long thought to be mere legend, had begun to make their presence known. They were the Void Reapers, and their goal was nothing less than the subjugation of all life in the galaxy. Alara, when she learned of this threat, knew that she could not stand idly by. The Void Reapers were a danger not just to Earth, but to every sentient being in the galaxy. If they were not stopped, all that she and her comrades had fought for would be lost. And so, once again, Alara found herself preparing for war. But this time, she would not be fighting alone. The alliances she had forged, the trust she had built, now bore fruit. The races of the galaxy, once divided, now stood together against a common foe. It was a war unlike any that had been fought before. The Void Reapers were a formidable enemy, their technology advanced, their warriors fearless. But the united forces of the galaxy, under Alara's leadership, met them head-on. Battles raged across the stars, on planets, and in the void of space. The casualties were heavy on both sides, but the Allied forces held firm. They fought with a determination and unity of purpose that the Void Reapers could not match. In the end, it was Alara herself who struck the decisive blow. In a daring raid, she led a small team into the heart of the Void Reapers' territory, to the very throne room of their leader. There, in a battle that would be remembered for generations, she defeated the Void Reaper King and shattered their power forever. The war was over. The galaxy was safe. But for Alara, the true work was just beginning. The galaxy had been united in the face of a common threat. But now, in the aftermath of victory, old rivalries and animosities threatened to resurface. Alara knew that she could not let that happen. She had to build on the foundation of unity that had been forged in the fires of war to create a lasting peace that would endure for generations to come. And so, she set to work. She convened a grand council of the races, a forum where all could come together as equals to discuss the future of the galaxy. Under her guidance, they worked to establish new laws, new institutions, a new order based on the principles of cooperation and mutual respect. It was not easy, and there were many setbacks and challenges along the way. But Alara never wavered in her commitment, never lost sight of her goal. And slowly but surely, a new galaxy began to take shape, one that was stronger, more united, and more peaceful than ever before. As Alara looked out across the stars, she knew that her work was not finished. There would always be new challenges, new threats to face. But she also knew that, together, the races of the galaxy could overcome anything. They had proven that, under the leadership of a small but determined world called Earth. Earth's revenge was complete, but its true legacy, Alara knew, was just beginning. Years had passed since the defeat of the Void Reapers and the establishment of the new galactic order. Under Alara's guidance, the galaxy had entered a new era of peace and prosperity. The old rivalries and conflicts that had once divided the races had given way to a spirit of cooperation and mutual understanding. Earth, once a small and insignificant world on the galactic stage, now stood as a beacon of hope and a model for others to follow. Its people, tempered by the trials of war and the challenges of peace, had emerged stronger and wiser. Alara, the once young and impetuous warrior, had grown into a respected leader and statesman. Her name was spoken with reverence across the galaxy, her wisdom sought by all. But for all her achievements, Alara remained humble, always mindful of the sacrifices that had been made, the lives that had been lost, to bring about this new age. Among those sacrifices, none weighed more heavily on Alara than the loss of Marcus. Though years had passed, his memory remained fresh in her mind, a constant reminder of the cost of their victory. She had sworn to herself that his death, and the deaths of all those who had fallen, would not be in vain. And so, even as the galaxy enjoyed its newfound peace, Alara remained vigilant. She knew that there would always be new threats, new challenges to face, but she also knew that the galaxy was stronger now than it had ever been, united in a common purpose. It was in this spirit that Alara convened a new council, one that brought together not just the leaders of the various races, but also the greatest minds and visionaries from across the galaxy. Their task was to look to the future, to imagine what the galaxy could be, and to work towards making that vision a reality. Under Alara's leadership, they set to work. They established new centers of learning, where the knowledge and wisdom of all races could be shared and expanded upon. They launched new ventures of exploration and discovery, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And they did not forget the lessons of the past. They created new institutions, new safeguards, to ensure that the mistakes of the old Galactic Council would never be repeated. They enshrined the principles of equality, justice, and compassion into the very fabric of their society. As the years turned into decades, Alara watched with pride as the galaxy continued to grow and flourish. New generations were born, ones that had never known the horrors of war or the oppression of the old order. To them, the names of Alara and her comrades were the stuff of legend, tales of heroism and sacrifice to be passed down through the ages. But Alara knew that their work was not finished, that it would never be finished. There would always be new horizons to explore, new challenges to face, and she knew that as long as the spirit of unity and cooperation that had been forged in the fires of their struggle endured, the galaxy would be ready to face whatever lay ahead. And so, as she looked out once more across the stars, Alara felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. The galaxy was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was better than it had been, and it would continue to get better, as long as there were those who were willing to fight for what was right. Earth's revenge had been a crucible, a trial by fire that had forged a new galaxy. And though the scars of that trial would never fully heal, They would serve as a reminder of what had been overcome and of what was still possible. Alara closed her eyes, and in her mind, she could see the faces of all those who had fought and sacrificed alongside her. Marcus, Lyra, Zara, and so many others. They were the true heroes, the ones who had made this new age possible. And as long as their memory endured, as long as their spirit lived on in the hearts of those who came after, the galaxy would never forget the lessons they had taught. The lessons of courage, of sacrifice, and of the unbreakable spirit of a small blue world called Earth.